we'll organize our scene and make it a little bit faster to load. So what we'll do is we'll drag all of these, I think, over. Yeah, we'll keep them by here. Add a network box around them, like that. Shift them up so they're in the middle. And usually I color code my geometry nodes to sort of like a dark gray color, like that. I'll do the same for the liquid and bubbles. Let's color code them. One for the cap. One for the text. Like so. We'll move the camera sort of up to the top, and this is entirely up to you guys where you place these, but I find this kind of works for me quite well, and it just means if anyone comes into your scene and opens it up, then they can easily sort of navigate around your scene. I'll color the cameras something like that kind of color. I'll change the render cam box to like a red color. Let's move the materials up somewhere around there. Create a network box. And we'll color that network box like a nice light blue color. Our ROP network can sort of live next to the camera. Whoops. We can color this like a sort of pinkyish color there. Put our other camera in. Although we don't really need that camera anymore, so we can delete it. And we've got our light dome. And I usually put my lights sort of to the side here. Create a network box. Like that. And usually I color my lights like a light yellow color. So if you come into my scene, you always know, well, these are his lights. And then underneath that, if you need to create more additional lights, like area lights, for example, then you can put them in this box here. We can take this a little bit further. We can call this, materials. So we're adding even more context. So if I press Control B now to go full screen, I'll click P to remove this parameter view here, so you can toggle that on and off with P. And you can see that that's nice and laid out. If anyone comes into our scene, they're going to be able to easily navigate through it. What we'll do next is, I think we can stay in this view, Control B. And I think we can make these paths relative. So I'm clicking P there to bring up the parameter view here. And what I'm going to do is that copy the geometry file parameter. So copy that, go back out. We're going to the large drops, and this large drops is using the same bottle prim, so it makes sense to use the same file. So here I'll do paste relative reference. So this is now linked to this file. So if I change this file here, this bar gets updated. And if I middle mouse click on the geometry file, this will show where that file is being imported. Just like that. I can do exactly the same for the small droplets. Paste relative reference. Let's go into the liquid. We'll copy the parameter on here and we'll paste that into the bubbles, as the bubbles is using the liquid geometry. Paste relative reference. The cap and the text can be left as is. I think it'd be a good idea to cache what we've done here to save it from loading up every time you load the scene. So I'll drop down a ROP geometry output, just like that. We'll plug this into the ROP geometry there. And we're just going to write out this geometry. So you can see here that it's taking a fair amount of time to compute, and we'll effectively remove that wait time by caching this out and re-importing it. So I'm just going to let that load. So that takes a little bit of time. Let's go on the ROP node. Let's specify an output file. We'll go to job, cache, bgeo. Create a new folder. We'll call this large droplets. It'll live inside there. So large droplets underscore, we can call this v1.bgeo. So that means we're writing out a single frame. And then we can just say render current frame, run frame 1. We can say save to disk. That's written out. Let's drop down a file swap. Let's load in our large droplets, and we can view from there. And now we have our large droplets cached out as a BGO, and we've just read it back in, and that will be super fast to load. One thing that I like to do is I like to do exactly the same. So copy parameter on here, and I paste that relative reference in there so these match. So if I write out a new piece of geometry, if I've changed something in this network here, then this automatically gets updated. But you'll have to make sure that if you do update something, you re-click this save to disk here, and this will import that new cache. Just like that. And I can put a network box around this just to say render me. I think I'll copy both of those. Let's paste them into the small droplets by here. So we're ropping out the small droplets now. We'll go upper level, create a small droplets folder. We'll name that small droplets underscore v1.bgeo. And we'll save to disk. And now if I reload this geometry here, this is linked to this one. So just so you can see this happening, if I view from here, we've got the bottle and our scattered points and whatnot. And then if I view from this file, we can see it's all ropped out nicely. We'll do exactly the same for the bubbles. All the way down to the bottom, paste them in. Upper level, bubbles folder, name the file. And we'll save to disk. And if you're wondering what a BGO is, it's essentially very similar to sort of like an OBJ, just in a Houdini format. And also what we'll do on all of these files is we will change these settings to packed disk primitive, and we'll change the display as to full geometry. If you're working in huge scenes where you've got lots of geometry, you can change this to bounding box, which is nice and fast to load. But in this scene, we've only got sort of a few assets, so we can leave them all to full geometry. I'll do the same for the other files. Pack disk primitive, full geometry. Dive in. Pack disk primitive, full geometry. View for the camera. And that's the scene optimized and laid out nicely. I'll just do a save.